Welcome to the Synergy Sessions. Aging Smarter in Silicon Valley. I'm your host, Tom Nelson, and I know firsthand as a family caregiver and part of the sandwich generation how tough it can be to take care of your aging parents while balancing your own life, career, and family. We'll bring you the experts and information necessary to help make your life a little bit easier and you a little bit smarter. Synergy Sessions is brought to you by Synergy Home Care, bringing you personalized in-home care and peace of mind to Silicon Valley families. I really do hope you enjoy the show. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Synergy Sessions, Aging Smarter in Silicon Valley. Today, we have Maria Nicolacoudis from Hearts and Minds, the CEO, and this is part of our kind of Alzheimer's and dementia series and how we have resources in our community supporting not only those with Alzheimer's and dementia, but also the family caregivers who take care of them. So welcome, Maria. So great to have you on the Synergy Sessions.
So great to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. On your website, it says our mission is to enrich the lives of people affected by Alzheimer's disease and related conditions by providing interactive, safe, nurturing, intergenerational services and support. As CEO of Hearts and Minds Activity Center, what is your role, and what in general is Hearts and Minds, and what do you provide?
Sure. So, well, first of all, Hearts and Minds is a nonprofit organization. So
Okay.
traditionally, I'm CEO, but traditionally you might think of me as an executive director. So I'm the overall administrator of the organization. And pretty much when you're a nonprofit CEO, you do a little bit of everything. So admin, management, finance, grant writing, fundraising, all kinds of stuff. But the most important thing that I do is I feel like I'm the keeper of the mission. I want to make sure that we stay on track with our mission. And that is to serve people living with Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And of course, we talk about intergenerational because we also have a child care on site specifically to integrate children with our seniors. It's really important for our seniors, for people living with dementia, to have a sense of community. And unfortunately, dementia robs people of a lot of those social community connections. So we try to recreate that here for our families.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you talked a little bit about it, but what are, as a day program, what are all the different kind of components of that?
Sure. So, an adult day program. So we are in a social adult day program, and that's different from an adult day health program. Both are terrific programs. Adult day health really focuses, as it says, on health issues. So they'll have nurses, physical therapists, occupational therapists. People are usually there because they have a health issue, but they also may need socialization. But there's less emphasis on the social, even though they have terrific social programs. There's some great organizations out there.
Sure.
We focus primarily on the socialization. So it's a very active day program. The idea is to make sure that people living with dementia have the ability to have an active life during the day. It also gives the caregiver an opportunity to have respite. So what that means is from the time people walk through the door to the time they leave, they are engaged in activities all day long. There's no sleeping. There's no napping. There's no downtime. And we want to make sure that it's a very balanced program. So there's exercise, arts, crafts, music, conversation, game playing, cognitive stimulation. And really the socialization is embedded in everything that we do, because the more social people are, the longer they can retain the skills and the abilities that they have. So, and the other thing too about adult day programs is that we are dementia specific, and there are some that are dementia specific, but most adult day programs for seniors are for seniors in general, the general population of seniors. There's also adult day programs for people with disabilities. If anybody's listening to this and they're thinking, gosh, I want an adult day program for my family member, be really careful to make sure that whatever's in your area, it's serving the type of person that you have in mind, whether it's a senior, somebody with dementia, or somebody with a disability. They're all terrific, but you want to make sure it's addressing the needs of your family member.
Right. Got it. So are day programs common, or is this fairly unique to our area here in Silicon Valley, or is that a resource that are in most communities?
So unfortunately, they're not as common as they really need to be. Even in Santa Clara County, there's simply not enough adult day programs, whether it's dementia specific or for seniors in general. You know, and after the pandemic, a lot of adult day programs shut down. They simply couldn't survive. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, all adult day
Right.
programs, all congregate settings were shut down for about a year and a half to 2 years, depending upon where they were at and the type of service. While most of them survived, a significant number did not. And even if they stayed open afterwards, struggled over the last couple of years to stay open. So we do have large areas in California, and I would say across the country, where there's a service desert for
Yeah.
seniors, and especially with adult day programs for people with dementia, especially, but even I would say people with disabilities. There's an organization in California called California Association of Adult Day Services, CADS,
Mhm.
and nationally there's also National Association of Adult Day Services. So if somebody's not in the Bay Area and or in Santa Clara County and they're thinking like, okay, well, where can I find something? I would suggest looking at either of those sites because they have members that they've vetted to make sure that they have quality services.
Okay, great. Most people, I think, one of the purposes of this is just to promote what you're doing. And I would imagine a lot of people aren't aware of it because of they just don't know about it. What is also different about the day program as opposed to kind of more traditional ways people get support for their loved ones, in home care, like what I do, as well as, actually moving into an assisted living or memory care or something like that. This is an option. What are the main differences, or how does that kind of dovetail into the continuum of support people can access?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a good question. I think, first of all, none of those services are exclusive. It's not either or. It's you could choose one and have another depending upon what your needs are.
Hmm.
But with adult day services, generally it's a lot less expensive. Think about, caring for somebody with dementia is a 24/7 proposition, and
Right.
especially as the dementia progresses. So a lot of folk can't afford in-home care
Hmm.
24/7, or they can't afford to go into residential care, or maybe they don't want to yet. Maybe they want to really respect their loved ones' wishes to remain to age in place. So being able to use the adult day services, it is significantly less expensive.
Hmm.
And then you can save, whatever resources you have to hire, bring in home care, all the other hours that you need the support.
Right.
But the other thing too that's I think really important is when you're in an adult day setting, you are really truly even if it's adult day health, you're in a more social environment. So
Hmm.
it kind of emulates more what regular life is like. I mean, certainly not all of us are in a social environment 24/7,
Hmm.
but we, as typical adults, even typical, aging seniors, we have the ability to go out, meet with our friends, be in clubs, go, even if you just, go out and go shopping or whatever it is you're doing, you're interacting on a regular basis. That is
Right.
really important for brain health. People with dementia lose that ability, so they become very isolated. And even if they have somebody coming into their home or work or interacting with them, that's still not the same as being in a very robust social environment where actually people are making friends and
Right.
relationships are really important to them. The other thing, too, is we can accommodate people at all levels and stages of dementia. So we are a little bit unique in that because we do provide personal care. So when somebody becomes incontinent of bladder and bowel, we can take care of that. We can also assist
Hmm.
with feeding so they can stay here really until end stage dementia. The
Hmm.
one requirement that we have is because we do assist them in the bathroom is they have to be able to bear their own weight because we can't
Hmm.
lift them onto the commode.
Sure.
But other than that, we can really keep them here for as long as they want to stay and the family
Hmm.
feels comfortable with them staying here. Now, that being said, we also have a lot of families that say, we're done, we're tired, we can't do this
Hmm.
anymore, and we need to place. And I fully support that because the
Hmm.
loved one, the person who's here, who has dementia, is only as safe as the family member who's taking care of them. And if that
Hmm.
family member, it's affecting their health, mental health, physical health, and something happens to them, then the person that they're caring for is in danger. So I always say before you reach that point, have a
Hmm.
plan. Either bring in outside help to help you, maybe in the middle of the night so you can sleep.
Yeah.
Or if you have to place, you should do it. Don't
Hmm.
feel like you can't do that. That's what's wonderful is there are so many different offerings and people can use them in different ways to meet their needs.
Right. Well, that was actually a pretty good segue into my next question, talking about all the different levels. So, people, I am very well aware, both my parents, my Alzheimer's and also vascular dementia, there's such a continuum. So how do you assess, if they're appropriate for, the day program or to put them into what, appropriate level? Because you, like, as you were just mentioning, you want to engage them and have a really quality experience no matter what level they're at.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. When people are interested in coming here, it's a pretty easy assessment process. What we do is we
Mhm.
have them come in. Ideally, what would be happen is the family caregiver would come in, take a tour. During that time, they would bring their loved one, and we would have them in program. We would try them out in different areas of program and see how they interact. And then, of course, there's paperwork to be filled out. Not that much, but they have to do a
Mhm.
physician's report. We have to get a TB test. So all the stuff
Right.
for licensing purposes. But what we're looking at here, I should start by saying that our program is divided into 4 areas, and it's based upon the level of dementia somebody has. So we're looking at
Mhm.
4 functioning areas for people's cognitive ability as well as their functional ability.
Okay.
So one area is for people who have very mild symptoms and really still pretty independent. They don't need a lot of support. We don't want to provide more support than people need because we want them to keep what they have for as long as possible. It's sort of like
Right.
using those muscles.
Mhm.
We have another area that is for folks who need a little bit more support. We do this based upon the Teepa Snow Gems model. So we call them
Mhm.
sapphire, diamond, emerald, and ruby. I mean, there's more gems than that, but we have the 4 areas. So that's
Right. Right. Yeah.
and then what we do is we design the program for each of those areas according to that gem. So for our diamonds, what we do is they're generally folks who have the ability to make decisions, which kind of activity they want to go into. They're still pretty social. They can still communicate very well, but they might not remember all of the instructions on a game, or they might
Mhm.
misinterpret how somebody's communicating with them. So what we're really looking at is making sure that they're set up in a social situation where they're with like-minded people, for instance, or the games are very simplified, instructions are simplified, and the staff are more supportive in making sure that if they start to forget the process, they're there to support them in remembering the process, but not doing everything for them.
Right.
Then our next level is our rubies. Our emeralds. And generally with the emeralds, communication is more challenging. They're losing their nouns. They're using a lot of verbs. They cannot finishing sentences. At this point, a lot of times they are incontinent of either bladder or bowel. They need a lot more direction, but they can still be very social. They can still carry on somewhat of a conversation with each other. And with more direction, they can follow through with a task or an assignment, but it needs to be smaller, simpler steps.
Mhm.
And then with our rubies, they are generally end stage. So it's really almost one-on-one.
Mhm.
Usually our staffing there is about a 3 to 4 to 1 ratio. And they can still have a great day and interact. But
Mhm.
it's now we're looking at people who really can't communicate very well, if at all. And also we're looking at using the senses that they have left, very tactile, lots of colors,
Mhm.
really basic types of tasks, but keeping them busy. So based upon that, we put people in different areas and then we kind of
Mhm.
determine where do they fit, looking at how do they interact with people as well as
Mhm.
how well do they do in activities? Because sometimes somebody can be very, very verbal, but everything
Mhm.
else means maybe not a sapphire, maybe a diamond. So we look at that.
Mhm.
And then really we look at their behavior when they're here. And pretty much most of the time, even if somebody is a little agitated, we can work
Mhm.
that out. Now, if
Yeah.
somebody's kind of swinging their cane around and trying to hit
Mhm.
somebody with it, probably not a good fit for now. But what we do
Yeah.
is we always tell the family, see if there's something you can do, talk to their doctor. Maybe do they have
Mhm.
UTI? And maybe now's not the right time. We're always here for you. That
Right.
being said, we're also always here for the caregivers. So we do caregiver support groups. We do caregiver
Mhm.
education. We also we have a new hire. She's our care navigator. So if people need resources. So
Mhm.
regardless of if somebody's here or not, all of the caregivers can still use all of those resources.
Mhm. Well, that's great. And you just answered all the questions to my next question, which is supporting that, which is perfectly fine. Means that I was on the same wavelength. Because it's an emotional process, and the caregivers themselves are navigating all this, and I was gonna ask what you do to support the caregivers in this. So you just listed all those different things. Is there anything else as far as communication? with the caregivers too, I'm sure there's a lot of nervousness around dropping them off the first time and all of that. And, how does that look as far as the support around the caregivers? I mean, besides the kind of high level, you talked about support groups and those things, about what's the experience like for them?
Yeah, I mean, the caregiver support that I mentioned before is just sort of, I think, the on top of really the true caregiver support. So we look
Mhm,
at caregiver support from a couple of different ways. Yes, it's the support
mhm,
groups and the education and things like that, but it's really what do we do with our caregivers on a day-to-day basis? And the first thing
mhm,
is just in terms of designing our program, we have extended hours. So we're open from 8:15 to 5:15 because a lot of
mhm.
caregivers work. So
Sure.
giving them that ability to do that. The other
Mhm,
thing too is we're making sure that we are in constant communication with our caregivers as much as our
mhm,
caregivers want, right? But
mhm. Right.
when somebody comes through the door, our staff are trying to make sure to look and see, is anything different from yesterday to today? And
Mhm.
a lot of times, a family member, a caregiver may not notice it because they're so busy and they're with that
Yeah.
person 24/7. They might not notice that there's been a change, but we will notice that. So we are always communicating, hey, we notice they're walking different, or we notice that they're coughing, or whatever it is. Or we might notice if we're assisting them in the bathroom, maybe they have a bruise on their leg that the caregiver didn't see, which is probably not a big issue, but maybe. Sometimes people with dementia, they fall and they don't say
Mhm.
anything and they might not experience pain the same way they used to. So we just want to make sure that the caregiver knows. And
Right.
if they need to go to the doctor, they have that option.
Mhm.
So we're always communicating with the caregiver, anything that we notice that's different or changing, and also positive things too. So if somebody has had a good day, we'll share that with the caregiver.
Mhm.
If they've made a friend, we'll share that with the caregiver. We have a CRM where the staff are all day long putting in information about everything that people do here. So all
Okay.
the activities they participated in,
Mhm.
what they ate, how many times they
Mhm.
went to the bathroom, how much they
Mhm.
drank. But also there's a place for us to write notes that will indicate like, oh, and even we'll upload pictures showing them doing, like yesterday we had a drum circle. So,
Mm.
people happily
Awesome.
playing the drums. And so we'll
Mhm.
upload photos. And so the caregiver, if they want, they can go into their loved one's portal and they can see that and they get that information as well.
Okay.
Because it is like a black box. I mean, you don't know
Mhm.
what's going on with your loved one, and most of them can't really express to their caregiver, their family member, what they
Yeah.
did. So having that is really helpful. So, and we're also available. I mean, there's a lot of times caregivers will call us, and we just had somebody called yesterday and said, hey, I'm noticing something different with my mom at home. Can you
Mhm.
observe and then report back? Are you noticing it as well? So we really try to work as a team.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I know one of the things that's probably the hardest from a caregiver perspective is when's the right time to introduce somebody to a program like this? Is it too early? There's always, not always, but many times there's resistance,
Yeah.
or you wait too long where now it's even harder to assimilate them because it's so when is I would imagine you would take anybody at any point to work it out. However, where's the sweet spot, do you think, or at least to start thinking about reaching out to you to integrate them into a program, because it sounds amazing.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. I think the sooner the better. Now, certainly if somebody's just received a recent diagnosis and they truly are at mild cognitive impairment or
Mhm.
very, very early stage where, they can still take care of themselves very well.
Yep.
No, they wouldn't need to be here. But the biggest thing I would always recommend families do is once they receive a diagnosis, don't be afraid to talk about it. And don't be afraid to talk about as the disease progresses, what would you
Mhm.
like? Set the stage for that.
Yeah.
And that way, by introducing some of the different services, they might have an easier time getting used to it. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, what happens is a lot of folks will wait until their loved one is at that point where they're almost joined at the hip, like wherever
Mhm.
their husband or wife goes or son or daughter goes,
Yeah.
the person with dementia is like literally 1 foot away from them because
Mhm.
they're anxious. They're losing. They understand that they're losing a lot of their abilities, and they've now focused on this one person who they know is sort of like their survival mechanism.
Yeah.
And so before it gets like that, you really want to start introducing them to a social environment. So that way they'll acclimate a lot easier. And then you also, as a caregiver, won't be so exhausted. I mean, literally
Yeah.
trying to go to the bathroom without somebody knocking on the door telling you to come
Oh,
out.
yes.
So, and in terms of too late, I mean, we do have people who come here and they go straight into our Ruby group, and that's fine
Mhm.
too.
Yeah.
I think it's very challenging. Sometimes people are they're just anxious and they don't want to come and they'll refuse to get in the car. Like they'll come and they'll
Yeah.
take a tour and they'll get in the car and they'll say to their caregiver, like, forget it, I'm never going there. And then they'll try to come and then they're like, no, I'm not getting out of the car.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And what we always say
Mhm.
is, they're not there yet.
Yeah.
Maybe in a month, maybe in 2 months, let's try it
Mhm.
again. The door is always open. But the
Yeah.
other thing I do recommend is that, and I hate to say it, it's always reflect back on when I took my oldest daughter to preschool, and she was
Mhm.
literally hanging onto my leg as I'm walking in the
Yeah.
door and I'm peeling her off of me. It's just, you have to get them past that anxiety. And so sometimes it's just being a little, I don't want to say tough, but just very perfunctory, just very like
Mhm.
matter of fact, no, we're going to do this, and not get
Yeah.
involved in the guilt and everything else. And that's the problem, is the caregivers feel really guilty and they don't want to offend the person that they're taking
Right.
care of. But really, what's the most healthy for them is to push past and
Yeah.
get them involved.
Oh, that's a great point, because I know firsthand that the routine, is so important to the, and familiarity, as you mentioned, they're at the hip of their caregiver person,
Yeah.
and anything different is going to create stress and anxiety. So getting to that point where the new schedule and routine, going to Hearts and Minds, or having a new professional caregiver, or for a respite or anything like that, you pushing through that. Now that becomes the new routine and familiar. And like you said, making friends at Hearts and Minds. And now that becomes the new normal that they start to become comfortable with.
Oh, yeah. And they
And
look
that
forward
pushing
to it.
through period is rough sometimes, not always. Sometimes it's okay.
Yeah, no, a lot of times people come and they're like, they'll come for an assessment and they'll say to their family member, like, okay, can I start now? And they're very excited because
Yeah.
they're tired of just sitting at home, not being
Right.
involved. But other people will have folks who the first month they're very, grumpy about coming here. And then
Yeah.
after that, they'll literally say to their family member on the weekend, like, don't I get to go? And sometimes they'll call it
Yeah.
work, school, the club, see
Uh-huh.
my friends, whatever.
Yep.
So we'll hear from the family member like, oh, we're so happy they wanted to come on a Sunday. And it's like, that's great.
Yeah.
So, but it takes.
Yeah. And I think also it just really depends on their personality too. If they're very social, they'll probably connect with that,
Yes.
because that's who they are. And somebody who's maybe a grumpy loner will never be happy about it, but still could benefit from it. And maybe you just have different types of activities for that type of person. But that's one of the things, it's not a one size fits all. For just because they have dementia, Alzheimer's, doesn't mean that their personality is completely changed, or they're a
Oh,
different person
absolutely.
that they were. So everything that
Yeah.
they're going to like and connect with, as before they had Alzheimer's or dementia, is probably still going to be true to some extent,
No, it's
as
absolutely
well.
true. It's funny because sometimes wives will say, oh, my husband doesn't want to do arts and crafts. And yet they're painting and doing all, and
Yeah.
we'll say, well, they did all that. What? And they'll say, well, they never did it before. I said, well, maybe they wanted to, they just didn't feel like they could.
Yeah.
But for the most part, yeah, and we've had people here who the family member will say they've always been an introvert, yeah, and they're introvert here. It doesn't mean that they can't still come and participate, but we set up each program area so
Mhm.
that way it could be small groups of people connecting with each other. It could be larger groups of people connecting with each other. There's always multiple activities going on in
Right.
each program area at the same time, so people have choice, and everybody
Oh,
here
good.
has freedom of movement and freedom of choice. So even if we say
Okay.
you're a sapphire but they want to go hang out with the diamonds, that's completely
Mhm.
their choice. If
Okay.
they say that, if there's somebody who says, I just want to sit at this table over here in the corner and do a puzzle, that's fine. They could
Mhm.
absolutely do that. They're still in a social milieu. They're still interacting with other people. And there's some people here who the family members say that's their happy spot. They like
Mhm.
being around people, but they don't want to be involved with people. And that's how they
Right.
always were. So that's
Okay.
fine, no problem. We don't push anybody to do anything that they
Right.
just don't want to do.
Excellent. So I'm going to make sure that I have all your contact information in the notes so they can contact you for questions. But just from this last segment, just even connecting with you just to start the conversation and then be able to put a plan together, maybe when they get to an appropriate level, then they already know you, the program, they have a plan, which helps with the stress as well. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that's maybe important relative to your program, or in general, the importance of, I can tell you, it's so important for the caregivers to use some type of resource to take stress off of them, because you had mentioned if the caregiver is stressed or burnt out or their health is at risk, it's not going to help the other person. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that's important to cover?
Yeah, no, I think we covered it all. But
Yeah.
I agree with you, Tom. I mean, if any caregivers are listening to this, the most important thing is caregivers need to really make sure that they're taking care of themselves before it becomes a crisis. So I
Mm-hmm.
would say, as much as you need a plan for your loved one, you need a plan for yourself. And I know
Yeah.
from personal experience, my brother has Down syndrome, but he also has Alzheimer's disease. And where I'm very fortunate is because he has Downs, he's in a system where he gets a lot of support because he has a developmental disability. But even with that, my sister and I are co-conservators, so we're constantly going out to his care home. We're doing a lot of things with him. We're managing his care. I have a lot of support between my sister and I, and also all of his other services. If I didn't have that, it would be a massive struggle. But even with that, I still have to put time together to plan what to do, how to do it, and then how to make sure I'm maintaining my relationship with him, because I don't want my relationship to just be as his caregiver. I want it to still be his sister. So I would just say to caregivers, make sure you have a plan for yourself. How do you want this relationship to be? How do you maintain the joy in your relationship with this person? And how do you care for yourself? And I don't mean go off and have a spa day. If you can, that's great. But even if you just take 10 minutes to sit and do nothing and get your energy back. I mean, just building those things into your day. Those are important. Making sure that you have friends and family who can support you, making sure you have people you can talk to, making sure that you are, taking your medication, going to your doctor's appointments. If you don't do that, you are going to not only hurt yourself, but you'll hurt your loved one.
Yeah, absolutely. So important. Well, thank you so much, Maria. I really appreciate you coming on. I mean, this is such an amazing program, and the service you're doing for only the community and the family caregivers. I know firsthand just how impactful it is. So thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening. And we will see you next time on the Synergy Sessions. Thank you for joining us on the Synergy Sessions. We know you have a lot on your plate, so we really appreciate you spending the time with us today. If you found the information of this episode useful, please reach out to the guest or the resources in the show notes. I know they would appreciate it and would love to help. Also, if you have an idea for a future episode, please reach out to us on Instagram or Facebook, or email us and let us know. We'd love to hear from you and provide information that's useful. Lastly, please remember, you don't have to do this alone.